Store Rewind.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode of the podcast that is known as the Video Store Rewind. My name is Rich. To my left is Matt.
Hello.
And to his left is Zach.
Hello.
Before we keep it moving, I just want to say thank you to Crystal Math for our intro music. It is super sweet, and we love it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's excellent.
Video
excellent.
Store
Thank you.
Rewind.
Such a touch of nostalgia.
With that being said, we're reviewing and abusing a movie that was released November 2nd, 1990. It was a pick by Zach, who's sitting to my right now. Zach, can you tell us a little bit about that film?
Yeah. Well, so I have just a brief synopsis. So, mourning his dead child, Jacob, who is played by Tim Robbins, a Vietnam War veteran, attempts to discover his past while his experiences prior to and during the war result in strange, fragmentary flashbacks and bizarre hallucinations of hellish creatures and images that continue to haunt him. So obviously, Tim Robbins, and then Elizabeth Pena is his girlfriend.
Oh, super babe.
Yeah, she's cool. And also want to tell you about what was going on in 1990, but first, not without a word from our sponsor.
Yes, take it away.
Yes, this week's podcast is brought to you by our friends at Farmer Jack, reminding all of our listeners that it's always savings time at Farmer Jack. And don't forget that for every purchase, you can earn double frequent flyer miles redeemable for any Northwest Airlines flight in the entire United States, except for Alaska and Hawaii, the freak states.
Fucking freaks.
Freak states.
Yes, so yes, the year was 1990, where the average American may have been listening to Hold On by Wilson Phillips in their Ford Taurus while on their way to their local cinema to see Ghost, all with enough time to get home and catch the newest episode of Cheers.
Oh, Ford Taurus, the future car.
Yeah, the future car.
Yeah.
And Matt, why don't you tell us what kind of toys and games the kids were into?
Oh, that was a big year for Super Nintendo. Super Mario World. The first appearance of Yoshi. And if you were walking around and you had a Game Boy, you would be sticking it in a street light if it was dark, because that's the only way you could have played it. And then
They sold those Game Boy lights that were terrible.
Yeah, they sold like the.
That was me.
Oh, sorry. And then the another toy that me and Zach.
I think I had it too.
Did you own it? It was the
I had a lot of
Beetlejuice Creepy Cruiser, and it
So
was this
cool.
badass purple. Do we want to say Cadillac?
Oh, yeah, it's
well, it was
definitely
more
like
like
a...
It was it kind of reminded me of like a 57 Chevy, or no, Cadillac. You're right.
Yeah,
Totally right. Like Eldorado. Or
Yep, top down, and it had a really sweet like cattle skull on the front of it.
Yeah.
And the pices were painted like the sandworms
black and white stripes.
It was like the car that Andrew Dice Clay drove in Ford Fairlane.
Ew.
Yeah, hickory dicker. No, I'm not going to go there.
Little Miss Muffin.
I had the Beetlejuice figure that had the head, and you could pop his head off, and underneath his head was the little head.
Oh, that's right.
And then there was a dial on his back that you could spin it. It was really cool.
I loved the cartoon. And Lydia wore like a spider web, like a red spider web dress, didn't she?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a dress, but it was like a I don't know what you call it, like a poncho type.
I don't know if
smock
I'm going to
or
be able to
whatever.
nail it or not, but I think I can. I think I could try to sound like what Beetlejuice sounded like in the cartoon. It sounded a lot like Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah, it was very
Wasn't it
animated.
not?
Oh, what do you say to that? No, I can't
Was
do
it not Bobcat?
Yeah, it was weird.
He
I'd have to
taught.
hear
He
it
definitely talked for someone else in our cartoon era.
I want to say R.I.P. Mom, but my mom fucking hated Bobcat Goldthwait. She couldn't. Anytime he was on TV, she was like, "Get him out of here!"
I really liked him in Scrooged. Remember him in
Oh,
Scrooged?
yeah,
yeah.
he was great in Scrooge.
He was great in Blow too. I can't feel my. Yeah, he's like I can't feel my face. All right, well that's all I had. That's all I have for toys and
Yeah, so
toys
do you
and
want me to
games.
explain some of the plot?
Yeah, tell
For those
us
of us who
what's
don't
going
know, so basically, Jacob returns home from the Vietnam War where he was really badly injured, and he starts to have these weird hallucinations. He later finds out that the other men in his platoon have been having the same visions as. So they start to suspect that the army gave them an experimental drug without their knowledge or consent, obviously. And he later finds out that this was true, that he spoke to a chemist that had made the drug, which was nicknamed the Ladder, which was to make soldiers more aggressive and kind of take men straight to their primal urges or whatever. And then Jacob finds out that a man from his own platoon was the one who had ended up attacking him. So basically what happens is no one could figure out what happened, and they found out that, well, they had all killed each other or attacked each other instead of the enemy. So finally, once he's given the knowledge of what happened to him and why, he seems like he's in a calmer place. He returns to his family's home and he sees a vision of his son Gabe, who had died before the war, who was played by Macaulay Culkin.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Played by Macaulay Culkin, who was also in the number one grossing movie of 1990, which was Home Alone, at $285,761,243.
That's a lot of money.
Jacob's Ladder finished number 47 out of 225 films released that year. Out of
That's still not
225,
bad.
that's not bad.
No, I'm
it grossed $26,118,851. It is 69% fresh with critics and 85% liked by audience.
Right. So at the end, after he figured out what happens, he goes back to the home and he kind of has a vision. He goes back to his family's original home and he has a vision of his son Gabe, who was Macaulay Culkin, and he kind of leads him, by the hand up into the staircase into like a bright white light. And then the next scene, we see Jacob lying in a wartime triage hospital bed, and the doctors are saying, "Oh, he gave a hell of a fight." They pronounce him dead, and they mention that he's got this really peaceful look on his face.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah. Spoiler alert!
Spoiler alert!
That's the end of the
whole
movie.
movie takes place in the span of him getting injured, stabbed with the bayonet at the beginning, and then dying, like the next day,
losing his last.
Yeah, it is the Jacob's Ladder scenario.
Yeah, in between.
Can you explain what Jacob's Ladder is to us?
Jacob's Ladder is?
Well, it's
not
in,
the film,
in
but the
biblical mythology. It's
Stairway to Heaven.
The ladder that I can't remember the character or not character, whatever. Yeah, they're characters. They're made up, right? Either the ladder that would reach from earth to heaven. That's why a lot of the names in the movie are biblical as well, like Jezebel, Jacob, of course, his kids, Gabriel, Eli, I think. So at the end, so basically once he has... if the viewer hadn't figured it out by that time, almost the entire movie is taking place in his head from the time he was injured in the war up until the end of the film. So all the hallucinations he's having are like the demons from hell that won't let him let go of his life. So once he's accepted death with the help of his dead son, he's now able to ascend the ladder, so to speak, to join his son in heaven. So it can be summed up from a quote from Louie, who is the chiropractor played by Danny Aiello, the great Danny Aiello, I should say.
Fuck yeah.
Who's talking about a Christian mystic named Meister Eckhart. He says, the only thing that burns in hell is the part of you that won't let go of your life, your memories, your attachments. They burn them all away, but they're not punishing you. They're freeing your soul. So if you're frightened of dying and you're holding on, you'll see devils tearing your life away. But if you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels freeing you from the earth.
It's a pretty good line.
That's the whole. It's great. It's probably my favorite movie quote ever. It's really
Chill,
great.
bro.
Favorite movie quote ever?
Chill, bro.
I think so. I really like it.
You're a chiropractor.
Super deep.
Yeah, relax, chiropractor.
Can you adjust my back and shut the fuck up?
Right. So I had never discussed this movie with what? Go ahead.
I just want to say that although this movie was released in 1990, it was American Film Magazine's on the list for American Film Magazine's 1983 list of best unproduced screenplays. It was finally made and released in 1990 on a budget of $25 million. It took in box office 26.1.
Just a razor thin margin.
I was going to bring up the Macaulay Culkin thing. He looks awfully young in 1990 in Jacob's Ladder. And he looks much older in Home Alone in
Obviously,
1990.
I don't know when it was filmed, but it had to,
it was 90.
They're both 90.
it had to have been filmed a year or two in
January and December. It had to have been.
Like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's almost an infant in Jacob's Ladder. It looks like like 5
He's
or whatever.
pretty tiny.
But Home Alone,
He's a little shit.
he's a little older.
Right.
It's just weird.
A little shit.
So I've discussed this movie a little bit with Matt, but I've never discussed it with Richie. Richie, what were your first thoughts?
I was intrigued, man. I could tell that this movie was going to be a mind fuck, if you will.
Yeah.
I really like movies like that. I mean, I've glanced over at your stack of movies before, and I see that don't you have Memento?
Yeah.
I like Memento. I like Donnie Darko. I like movies that make you think and just put you on that ride. I just didn't know what was going on, though, man. It was like, it opened up October 6th, 1961. They give you an exact date. Exhausted Vietnam soldiers. My second note, though, it says, surprise, it's Ving Rhames.
I love Ving Rhames.
It's actually a couple dudes I recognize.
Eric LaSalle.
Almost immediately, they're all relaxing. They're all exhausted, but they're
Surprise,
relaxing.
Ving Rhames.
They call from attack, in the tree line, and it's an attack. And while this attack is going on that you never really see clearly, they all start convulsing. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was hooked. I was like, okay, what's going on?
Ving Rhames was spitting up blood and shit.
And they're like a lot of dudes are convulsing, and like just dropping like flies, and you don't know what's going on. And it had shown a lot of these guys drinking water and eating.
Weren't they smoking weed?
They were.
They were all smoking too,
Yeah.
so I assumed it was a poison of some kind.
Why don't you come and
So
jerk this?
that's when it had me. I was like, "What's
I don't know.
It tweezers.
The
why he
jokes
said
and then
it
I'm
like
like,
Pauly Shore.
why is it so weird?
what's the
jokes were
what's
so
the deal?"
weird.
That's what I
those
wanted
were
to
all
know.
improv, by the way. Those weren't in the scripts.
Oh, really? But,
Yeah, I believe that they said all those the conversations between the soldiers were all improv.
Oh, okay. Because
And then-
Tim Robbins had that weird look at. It's weird because it looks like he's almost smiling in every
Yeah, he's always got
that weird smile, and
kind of butthead smile.
everybody likes him in the movie.
Oh
It's
yeah, they're
really weird.
ribbing him. They're like, "What, are you jerking
Well, I
off in the woods again, or taking another shit, Professor?"
Yeah,
like
I
at
think
the
that they
beginning.
respect him because he's a doctor.
He's the
Right.
doctor. Yeah.
Well, let's keep going because I had now that it's coming back to me. So
Well, no, yeah. So they get the attack. It's all happening, and they show Tim Robbins holding Ving Rhames, trying to stop him from biting his own tongue off. Whatever. He then promptly retreats into the jungle, where he is attacked and stabbed by a bayonet, and the attacker is not shown. That's another thing that had me going. I'm like, they went out of their way to show that bayonet go into him and not
Right.
show who did it.
Right.
So I'm thinking, well, what's going on here? You know. So right now you've got the two setups for the mystery that had me intrigued is the mystery of the
Right.
what happened to these dudes, and then who really stabbed him, and why did you not show it?
well, it's kind of like the Bambi thing.
And then from there, Zach, I'm gonna let you take it for a minute because he gets stabbed, and then he wakes up in his postal uniform on the subway. In crime, in 1990, New York was crime ridden. It was a slum. It was a slum.
It was.
Oh yeah, it
It was
disgusting.
totally dangerous. A la
Because this was, I think the movie, the main part of the movie takes place like 5 or 6 years after the war, after you come back.
yes.
I think.
Because, well, see, I didn't really get a date. I had to Google it because I don't know my American history that well. I just know that the Vietnam War ended April 30th, 1975. I'm assuming this is 1978 or 80.
I would like
maybe.
to point out. I would like to point out the Vietnam. Tim Robbins looks like Tim Robbins from Shawshank Redemption, but when he comes back and he wakes up, he looks like Tim Robbins playing the British guy from Anchorman. When they were doing the fight, he had the curly, his curly hair was back. Yeah. I want to point that out. There was a drastic look difference there.
So he wakes up on the subway in a postal uniform. So that just tells you right there.
Reading Albert Camus' The Stranger, which is a book about a man who murders another man and is sentenced to death for it.
Huh.
So it
I didn't even notice that.
It sort of parlays into the plot of the film a little tiny bit.
Fucking nerd.
Did you talk about the? Yeah, I guess.
No, go ahead.
Did we mention all the box office other than the #1 film that year?
Oh no.
Yeah, I didn't want to forget about that.
No, that's fine. It's just number 1, Home Alone.
Domestic.
2, domestic. Yes, you mentioned Ghost earlier.
But
that
Ghost
was,
was the
winner
worldwide
right there.
highest grossing.
Dances with Wolves 3, Pretty Woman 4, 5, TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh man,
I can't believe
so
that's not
good.
higher.
6, The Hunt for the Red October. 7, Total Recall.
Hunt for the right.
8,
Total
Die Hard
Recall?
2, Die Harder. 9, Dick Tracy.
stupidest
Another
tagline.
good year for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Good movie, though.
10, Kindergarten Cop. And this is what I was going to say. Oh, How the Mighty Have Fallen. Number 11, Back to the Future Part 3.
I hate that fucking.
So
movie.
we went from 1 in our last one where it just dominated
Yeah.
the summer to
2 was really good.
11th.
But we'll talk about that
Honorable
later.
mention goes to number 13, probably one of my favorite of all the movies listed that I saw in the top 20, which is the NASCAR racing movie Days of Thunder.
Days
starring
of
Tom
Thunder, oh
Cruise.
my
I love Days of Thunder. It's one of my
What about
faves.
Robert Duvall, man?
Man,
We're eating ice cream.
you can't help
You're
but
eating ice cream.
you can't help but want to root for Cole Trickle.
Cole Trickle, yeah.
I can't believe all these movies. Misery came out. That was number 19.
Oh, man.
Edward Scissorhands, number 20. Problem Child, number 21. Remember Problem Child?
I hated Problem Child.
I loved it when I was little, but boy, is it awful.
Come
now.
on,
Yeah.
Junior.
I hate that movie.
Arachnophobia, such a great movie.
Wait a minute. Arachnophobia was
John
good.
Goodman and Jeff
Yeah.
Daniels.
I want to go back to Problem Child. Was
John Ritter.
John
I know, but was it Kramer was the bad guy?
Kramer was the bad. Michael
Smiley
Richards, yeah.
pies.
Yeah, oh, he's so creepy.
that is a really weird role. He was just like a cracked out Kramer, though.
Yeah. I mean,
A hell bent on fucking.
He was a mean dude in that movie. Like everyone was like totally. I just can't look at Michael Richards and be like menacing. You know that doesn't
Right.
come to mind.
what were some of your other notes, Richie?
About the box
Excuse
office,
me.
that's it, man.
Yeah.
I just
Or
let's
your
see.
notes about the film? Like things he knows.
we're going straight in order. I've got
let's do
Professor retreats in the woods, stabbed unknown, wakes up in the subway. So then, as he's leaving the subway, he's getting off his train. He sees a woman, and he asks her. He says, "Did we pass such and such?
Bergen Street."
Yeah, thank you. And she doesn't speak English, or she just stares at him. And he's like, "Oh, okay, crazy bitch." He doesn't say that. That's
like,
just me.
You can see it on his face.
He pauses. He goes, "All right,
Gotcha." So he gets to the door's about to open, and he looks at a homeless man. And at first, because all right,
Oh, is this the fucking tale?
I had to start this movie like 15 different times because it just so happened that anytime I got to this point, my kid would start crying or something would happen, and so this is the 15th time I watched it, and I saw it this time. But I was like, did he focus on the? I kept thinking he was focusing on the boots that the homeless man was wearing, like it was like an army thing.
Okay,
but then I finally noticed the tail. And
it was a fucked up looking tail, dude. It wasn't like a tail. It was almost like
is it a demon tail?
It was like
a dog tail.
It was like an oversized octopus extremity.
Exactly.
It was fat
because the homeless man is laying down in the subway. He's covered up completely, pretty much like wrapped in a blanket or whatever homeless people wrap themselves in newspaper. And creeping out the bottom of it is this creepy fucking tail.
It was actually great special effects because it moved freely. It
really
looked
wagged
real,
a little bit like a sleeping dog.
There was no
kinda.
post-production special effects in the film. Everything's practical, just like
that's amazing.
Just like The Thing. Or
I'm firm. I'm totally 100% firm on practical effects in movies.
Yeah. Even when you have the budget to do it,
CGI works sometimes. But I'm a sucker for practical effects, man.
Christopher Nolan not only he does what he has to, but like the Inception stuff, like that's all in camera. Like there's no.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Back to these fucking tales.
Yeah,
they were fucking awesome.
So he sees the he sees the tail. He gets off like freaked out. And his
but he did walk away from it like, whatever, just
tail.
tail.
Yeah, he kind of did shake it off a little bit.
He didn't think he saw it.
So he gets out, and his exit or his entrance onto the street from the subway, because you have to walk up to the street, is blocked off and shut down.
Yeah, it's barricaded.
So he does again. The only logical thing is like, oh, I'm gonna exit on the other side of the track, so I'm gonna cross the tracks. Which, if you guys know anything about subways, and I only know a little bit, the third rail.
Yeah. Well, there's a scene where he kind of takes his toe and kind of does a little tap to see if it's electrified.
The third rail is I don't know how many volts it is, but it's highly. Oh yeah. It's super dangerous.
Well, it runs a whole subway train.
Yeah. So he goes across. He trips. Almost. This is a dumb idea. Don't ever cross the tracks.
I can tell you that firsthand.
Oh yes. I'm sorry. I forgot. Matt's a conductor.
Yes.
He drives Thomas.
I don't drive Thomas. I sit next to the guy who drives Thomas.
Oh, okay. I thought you drove Thomas.
Nope.
But
I do not operate the train. I just sit on it and watch signals go by.
He trips on the track, and you think like, oh my god, this guy's about to get hit. It's so close, but he's in a split, isn't he? Like a track split.
Yeah. Yep.
And instead of going onto his track where he's trapped or fallen and can't get up, it goes the other way.
And that's where shit gets very real for him.
Everybody's lined down the side of this train on the inside, and they're all staring out at him. Right. And they all have they're faceless.
Right. But at the very back, remember
at the very back,
there was like
a man. So scary.
He looked like Slender Man a little bit.
Did you see when it went by? He did this.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Slow wave.
Actually, Matt, he looks exactly like Slender Man.
Yeah, I immediately thought Slender Man.
I have, yeah.
They're all staring at him. There's a faceless man in the rear window who looks exactly like Slender Man. And you're like thinking, at this point, I'm like, whoa, what the fuck's going on?
I was like, all right, well, okay.
So
that's kind of weird.
He makes it back to his apartment, and his girlfriend points out that he looks like shit.
Yeah.
And the first thing I notice is that
he does.
All right, Tim Robbins, probably an amazing personality. He's a really tall dude, so he's probably got a huge wiener, but his girlfriend is way too hot for him.
Oh yeah.
Who is that? Did you say the actress?
Elizabeth Pena.
Jesus.
I'll go into the little.
Any
trivia
relation
about her,
to Michael Pena, by the way? Do we know?
I don't know, but isn't he from? The only thing was he one of the cops in the movie
End of Watch?
Crash. The movie Crash.
Yes, he was.
Okay. He was also in Ant-Man.
So yes, he's in a bunch of stuff. I love Michael Pena.
He's great.
Actually. He's a great supporting actor.
Apparently, the actors that were apparently the director Adrian Lyne auditioned 300 women, including Jennifer Lopez, Madonna, Annie McDowell, Demi Moore, and Julia Roberts. And they eventually went with Elizabeth Pena, who's the very first person who auditioned.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Weird.
Guess what movie she starred in? Guess what movie she...
La Bamba.
Suddenly Susan.
I don't remember the name of the movie.
Or no, Desperately Seeking Susan. I'm sorry.
She starred in another movie directed by Lisa Gottlieb, who directed Just One of the Guys.
Are you serious?
Really?
Yeah.
You know the name
It's
of the movie?
It's Christina Applegate and Elizabeth Pena. I can't.
Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead is the only thing that comes to mind.
Don't
when I
tell
think
mom
of
the
Christina.
babysitter's bored.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually have trivia about Elizabeth Pena as well.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Elizabeth Pena, this is your time to fucking
Right.
shine on Video Store Rewind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
What was Anthony Kiedis' only line in Point Break?
Fuck me.
Still never remember.
Zach,
That's got to be a lot of
Zach,
something.
Zach, I would say Google
You've
it.
got to be kidding me. Or what is that?
Now,
Zach, no.
Richie, take
I
it
would-
away.
I would say Google it, but that would be a waste of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'll
Meat,
remember it one
meat
day.
explosion. So he gets there. Tim
explosion.
Robbins, Jacob, sorry, he gets to the apartment. His girlfriend's way too hot
I
for
forgot
him.
to say that last
He's going to
episode.
get into the shower, and I just want to point out that there's nothing about Tim Robbins. I can admit when I see a good-looking man or something, there's nothing about Tim Robbins that I look at and I'm like, that's a looker.
Well,
At
maybe,
this
maybe
point-
she likes his personality.
But she
Maybe she's
deeply
not
admires his
shallow.
naked body before they fuck in the shower.
Yeah.
Is my note right
And
here.
then my wife and I, we watched it because she was interested in it because my wife generally takes interest in what we watch during, what we
Yeah.
talk about during the podcast. However, she won't listen to the podcast, but she will watch the movies with me,
Right.
which is ironic. But she goes, he's entirely way too tall to be in movies.
and
I
he's
go,
like,
I couldn't agree with you
6'7",
more.
dude.
He
His
is huge.
height disqualifies him from being shot on film.
Well, no, it's just that because everybody else in show business is between like 5'5" and 6 foot.
Oh, he can't be in a movie with Tom Cruise.
Well, what's it called? Just like Michael Clark Duncan and Tom
Well,
Hanks.
I think did I
Tom
talk
Hanks
about this?
is like
Yeah.
a foot
Go-
taller
going
than
with
Michael Clark
height,
Duncan.
I told
And
you
they-
guys that I read this
I didn't know
thing that they build the sets around Tom Cruise.
Yes, you
to
did
where
tell me that.
there's platforms for every walking scene he has with people to give him an extra foot of height in film.
That's great.
Speaking of, I read in part of the trivia was they filmed the scene. So the lawyer that they try to get in the movie is played by Jason Alexander.
That's right.
And
George
so he's
Costanza.
very, very short. So they purposely filmed him on the steps, like coming down like the steps
Oh,
of the courthouse or
yeah.
wherever it was, so that it wasn't so awkward
Yeah.
them talking to each other.
He's like on step 15, and Tim Robbins is on
could
1.
hear
and they're the same
anybody
height.
walking next to Tim Robbins that movie. You could hear little clicks.
How's the weather up
They're like it's like tied. They're tied like milk crates to everybody's shoes. So they're looking-
Everyone's wearing high heels stilettos.
he's huge.
So they fuck.
he gets in the shower and it's like spraying on his stomach. Like,
Yeah. so then they go to, obviously they sleep, and it cuts to him having a dream or a flashback that he's crawling through the jungle injured, and he sees soldiers in the distance, the red lights that they carried, and he's like,
Right.
help me. But he can't get
pretty
it out.
good.
Wakes up.
Pretty good.
Wakes up, and she notifies him that Eli, and at this point we don't know who this is. It says, my note says, "Who is Eli?" He dropped off pictures to her. So Eli drops the pictures off. They're looking for it, and I don't have the quote, but at this point I'm questioning myself. Did Jacob sell his soul? Because Jezebel, who's his girlfriend that's too hot for him, she references it as she's sitting at her vanity, putting on her makeup. I forget the quote. I don't know the quote exactly, but she references a selling of the soul, and I was like, wait a minute, what's going
I remember
on?
them arguing like those are his kids. We find out his kids' names, and she can't remember their names, and she says they're weird names, and he says they're biblical names. What's wrong with that? Where
But
the hell do you think Jezebel came from?
I want to point out also, this is very important to me because something I picked up on and it really, really bothered me, is that we find out that he has a son who's played by Macaulay Culkin who has passed away. His name is Gabe.
Right.
She only references Gabe as your dead son.
Correct.
The whole movie she'll say, your dead son, your dead son, your dead son. And I'm like,
Because she's
what
sick
the
of hearing about him or
fuck?
something.
So who's Eli? She says your wife was going to toss him, so he dropped him off the pictures. That's when he's going through and he sees the picture of his deceased son Gabe, who's played by Macaulay Culkin, and his ex-wife. We find out her name is Sarah.
Right.
So he sees this picture of Gabe, Macaulay Culkin, sweet and innocent, and he starts, he gets visibly upset.
Wait, did we
He
talk
starts-
about the pictures burning yet?
No, we're not there yet. He starts crying. Jezebel gets weirdly, insanely jealous that Jacob is upset after seeing the picture of what she says, your dead son.
Well, she says it as like, well, I just don't like things that make you
Yeah,
cry.
I don't like things that's exactly what she says.
But maybe she's just jealous.
And then cut scene, she's in the basement. Old, I don't think they have them anymore, but they had incinerators in these New York City apartments for trash and stuff. Cut scene, she's burning the fucking pictures.
Right.
But he's not in the scene.
No. He has no idea. She takes the pictures of the family and she takes them down to the incinerator. And
That
burns
was
them.
super important to me at the end of the movie.
Now I'm
Why
firing
is this
off.
scene happening if he's not in it? If this
Zach,
is
you've seen this movie quite a few times more than me. I'm literally jotting these down as this
Right.
movie's going on.
Okay.
And my emotion pours through right here. She fucking burned his pictures! Exclamation point! I'm pissed, dude.
But
Yeah,
but
it was
that's
kind of-
another thing. He wasn't.
Also,
in
it
the
was
scene.
like maybe she wants to just him to forget about his old life,
Right.
with his other wife.
But
Yeah.
I let it go.
I can see why you let
until the end of the movie. I was like, but he wasn't around during this.
Yeah.
But so what was he? Obviously we already
That's
did,
crazy,
we already
dude.
did the ending. But was he
Right.
just thinking that she did that? Maybe like an afterthought.
I don't know.
Maybe it was like the first part of him letting go of his life, so he could.
There you go.
Maybe.
Well,
That's
we-
probably
did-
it.
we
Your
then
memories,
find out-
your attachments, they burn them all away.
I did-
That's the quote that I read earlier. They're
I
literally
did do
burning
some.
his memories.
I did do some googling of the name Jezebel, and
Yeah.
in the Bible, Jezebel was I want to say married to King Ahab, and he or she tried getting him to stop following his faith and to start following some demons.
Okay.
Yeah. so-
Okay.
I read like two sentences about her, but it was something about she was very kind of like deceptive or
Yes. She tried getting her husband to commit blasphemy and start.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
We find out that Jacob and Jez, who Jez is way too hot for him. How do you find a chick like this? They work together. That's where.
Yes, she works at the post office.
Yes, she works at the post office. He brings her in like a coffee.
Was that your note? How is she? How did they get together?
Why? How did that happen?
How?
Where do you guys meet?
The mail.
And then my next note is who plays the chiropractor? Thank you,
Danny Aiello
Danny
from-
Aiello.
I think most people remember him from Do the Right Thing.
He is giving him an adjustment, Jacob, and he mentions that he talked to Sarah. He talked to Sarah, and he said, "Well, why don't you get back with her?" And he's like, "Oh," they kind of beat around it a little bit, and then you find out from the chiropractor that Jacob did 6 years schooling on getting his PhD.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck do you work at the post office? He then suggests that him and Sarah get back together, which Jake responds, "She threw me out."
Right.
So I'm like, okay, was he cheating with Jez and she threw him out, or is it just as something like after the Vietnam War she threw me out? He then gives him a crack, like he cracks his back really hard, and we go boom right into a flashback. And I forget what the flashback was. I didn't note it. So
It was something from the war.
yeah, it was something from the war. Him getting I think it was him getting transported in the helicopter. Actually,
Yeah, because he was staring up. And
Yes.
he was getting airlifted.
airlifted after the bayonet attack. He did get the attention of the soldiers, and he's getting airlifted out. He wakes up, and Danny Aiello, the chiropractor, gives him this look.
I miss
And they look at each other, and he's like, "What happened?" Obviously, he had passed out for a while, and he said, "I had to get in there deep for an adjustment." And I took that in as like I had to get in your soul
In your
for
psyche, in your
something was going on
subconscious.
for and then after he says that, Jake looks up at him and he
It's
says,
a really cool shot. Too.
and he says,
Yeah.
"You look like an angel, Louie."
the sunlight is behind
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, you look like an overgrown cherub.
He did. He did.
So yeah, and I just was like, okay, this means a lot.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
obviously
that
does.
was huge right there.
This means a lot. So then we go down to
Wait, Richie, I'm sorry, I don't mean to stop you, but
No, that's fine.
I definitely forgot that when he's walking into his apartment in the in the hallway, there's hospital chairs, there's wheelchairs all over the place. That's where
I didn't
They
notice.
almost look like a bassinet, like a little thing that you would put
and,
a baby in.
right? And there were some wheelchairs, and I was like, well,
Is it an asylum?
this
Like,
is
I
weird.
didn't
Yeah,
notice that.
that's why I'm like, well, this is weird.
I
And
would pick up on something like that's
I
weird.
remember talking to Zach. I texted you. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, he's either dead or he's in an insane asylum. And you know, I
you said he was in
just
hell or-
keep watching.
There's after the chiropractor scene, there is what I noted as a very awkward moment where he's walking through. Because all right, to be real, I forget the time. I in my head, I'm forgetting the timeline. They're not doing a lot to in my opinion, to tell me that this is a couple of years after the Vietnam War. I'm thinking this is 1986 or something, you know?
I just assumed it was mid-70s.
And then it happens when he's walking back from the chiropractor. He walks through kind of the hood, and there's a bunch of black teenagers on a stoop. A very awkward moment when Mr. Postman is sung, like, wait a minute,
it's like when people
Mr.
are singing Happy
Postman.
Birthday to you, and you're like, what do I do?
Well, Tim
Do I
Robbins
smile
stops
or not?
under the bridge,
no, he
and
loved
looks
it.
back, and he's got like this shit-eating grin on his face.
It's
like,
just like everybody in the movie that he loves Tim Robbins.
Loves Jacob.
Especially the part where he goes to the interracial party and he's the only white guy there.
Yeah.
And the palm reader, are we there yet? Is that
No,
later
right
on?
now,
Oh,
right,
yeah,
no,
that's
no, no.
an
Right
important
now,
part, too.
Mr. Postman gets sung, and then a very important part happens, is when he's going down that narrow alleyway or street, and that fucking
the
car comes around the corner,
Oh,
and that
that's
guy's
right.
like, "Look out!" Yells, "Look out!" And this car is barreling towards him, and he's trying to get away from it, and he dives out of the way. And as he dives out of the way, we get another shot of in the back seat,
Slender Man.
face.
Slender. It's like a demon face more this time, not so much a Slender Man.
I can't remember. I
But
cannot
it
remember.
pulls away, and he's like,
Yes, demon face in the back window.
yeah, in the back window, you see him like the weird, like,
Oh yeah,
like
he's doing the
shaking
shaky
really fast.
face. Yeah.
Zach, would you constitute this as a horror movie or psychological thriller?
I wouldn't call it a horror film.
Okay. Because this is, I'm on a lot of 80s, 90s horror film Facebook
I would say like
sites.
psychological thriller, I guess.
But
I don't know.
Jacob's Ladder is passed around on those sites a lot.
Really?
As a lot of people's favorite horror movies.
I wouldn't call it a horror film, but it is disturbing.
I wouldn't call it a horror film.
Yeah.
Except for one part, which we'll get to later. So obviously you see a demon in the back window, and you've seen a homeless man with a tail and a subway car full of fucking faceless Slendermen. What are you gonna do? I gotta go see my doctor. So I'm gonna go see Dr. Carlson.
Hey, that movie with the part where the car was barreling toward him. There was the same part where somebody was drinking a coffee, and the guy sticks his hand out the car, pours the coffee, and then throws the cup. And I'm like, what the?
Oh, I missed that.
Fucking just throw the cup of coffee. Like,
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I just watched it.
Maybe he was
Splash.
worried if he threw it,
I
it
was a
would
little
splash back.
I was a little tipsy when he was in his car. I was a little tipsy when I watched it, but I'm like, the fuck was that?
Have we gotten to the party yet?
No, trust me.
Okay.
Oh, we'll get to the fucking party, Zach.
I love the party.
You hold your fucking horses. He goes to see Dr. Carlson. The nurse secretary informs him that he is not a doctor in this facility.
Oh, that was before
There's
the party then?
no file for Jake in the office. No record of him of ever being there. Yet he's been going there for years, he says.
That's a really stressful part for him.
And then
he
because he's
really got intense.
I need to see.
You can
Dr.
see him. You can see him
but
change.
then,
Yeah,
but then
that was
under
good.
Her
Yeah,
little nurse, what do you call that thing?
The little cap.
The little nurse cap. He sees horns coming from her fucking head. So of course, what do you do when you see that? He obviously freaks out. She turns her head for a minute. He runs into this a hospital / asylum looking for Dr. Carlson.
and he ends up in a self-help group kind of.
Finds group session.
Right, like
Dr.
AA or
Carlson's
something.
room. How did Dr. Carlson die? In a car accident. What kind of car accident?
Blowed up.
It blew up. LOL in parentheses for my note. Dog passed away in a car accident. So then he gets back to the apartment, sees Jazz, and she immediately brings up his ex-wife. Jake spent 2 years in Vietnam, and he confides into Jez about his visions, and he refers to them as demons. He tells her they weren't human, and Jez says, "What were they?" And she scratches him really hard on the back or something. It was really weird, like, because I noted that it was a hard scratch on the back, and then she says, "Do you still love me?" And that's when I'm really thinking, what in the flying motherfucker is going on in this movie?
There's a lot
like,
of shit
I'm
going
intrigued, but you got to give me a little bit more. So cue this party. Now, this party has got to be the fucking the biggest part of the movie.
It's
for
like
me.
in the meat packing district when
Yeah.
Looks like a cool party.
It's
It
a very
does.
diverse party, black, white, Latino, but the only white person there is Jacob. He opens up the fridge and there's an animal head in it. Did you guys catch what kind of animal head it was? Because I did.
Was it a pig?
It was like a pig or goat or
a cow
something.
or I can't remember.
Can we say boar?
Yeah, it could have been a boar head. So it's this disco
think
party.
boar
Everyone's
head
having a great
boar's head.
time, and there's a palm reader there. Oh, but the palm reader, they say you got to talk to Jake. You got to talk to Jake.
Sit down, Jacob. Let me read your palm.
Now, according...
She wasn't Jamaican, was she?
No.
She might have been Haitian or something.
I don't think she...
Hey, isn't that the same thing?
She says, according...
I read your palm a
She's
thousand
reading his
times.
palm, and according to this line, you're already dead. And that's when I'm like,
his
fuck.
lifeline.
The lifeline wasn't there, right?
Yes.
Right.
So, you're already dead. There's that. So then he proceeds back into the heart of the disco party where he starts dancing, and he is a fucking terrible dancer.
He's really bad.
How fucked up is he? He leaves a fortune teller who tells him that according to his lifeline, he's already dead, and he proceeds to start dancing at this party, and he is a terrible dancer.
Don't tell me what a good and bad dancer is, Richie.
I can't dance.
Speak for yourself. I thought it was magical.
He's just kind of doing this.
And then he's like,
With that Tim Robbins
I don't
smile.
really
He
recall
dances for
him.
about 5 seconds like, I'm out.
I don't really recall him smoking or drinking anything, but I maybe wasn't paying attention that much. But how fucked up is he? Because he's dancing and he looks like he's just obliterated,
yeah.
right?
Hey, maybe maybe that's the drugs that
Exactly
that they're administering him.
He's a terrible dancer. How fucked up is he? He sees a man staring from across the room, staring at him. The man turns into a demon, and Jacob immediately pulls a fucking Velma from Scooby-Doo and drops his glasses on the dance floor.
Oh, right.
That's immediately what I thought of. Like, his glasses fall, and people are dancing, probably stepping on him, and he's on his hands and knees like, "Hey, Shags, have you seen my glasses?" And then I'm going to let you guys take over for a minute, right? But I just want to read this right here, what I wrote. It says, Jezebel gets slam fucked on the dance floor by a demon. Horn protrudes from mouth. Can you guys put that? Can you guys elaborate on that for a little bit?
Basically, she's having sex with the devil.
I can't do it.
She's getting slam fucked by a demon, Zach.
Slam fuck.
She's penetrated so thoroughly that
She's on
it comes out of her
she
mouth.
bought a one-way ticket to Pound Town from this guy because it was graphic.
I believe it's Baal.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce the demon's name? Baal. That's what Jezebel, in biblical sense, is the one who turns to. So maybe that's... Is it Baal? Baal?
I don't know. I was just shocked
Baal?
at how graphic it was because, it wasn't just like a little bit of slapping. It was like, they were going.
She was just very into it too.
Yeah, that's
I love how you could start to. It was like the guy's arms, and then all of a sudden it was like these big wings.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They scratch her ass and draw
Well, you
blood.
better watch. That's Bob's wife. Bob's gonna get drunk and come
and then the horn comes from the back of her head and goes through her head and protrudes from her mouth.
Right.
It's very violent, and I was just like, "What in the? Can we get some fucking what is happening?"
I liked that it was that sequence when they were when she was dancing with that thing. It was all like strobe light effect, so you couldn't see everything. It was really
no, it was strobing
convenient.
in and out, but it was graphic, man.
So
And I just couldn't believe. I just was shocked.
I found out that the song that was playing, the James Brown song.
Oh my God, James Brown!
James Brown comes up again.
Are we going all the way back to just one of the guys?
We're circling back.
Holy fuck!
So the song, I think, was called "My Thang," and it was off an album called "Hell." So that makes perfect sense.
That is way too deep. Do you think they did that on purpose?
Of course they did.
That's
of course they did.
insane. Man, were these guys smoking crystal meth or crystal meth?
Crystal meth.
Dude, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
Jake sees this, he passes out, and it goes to a quick flashback, which I think we were mistaken earlier, because I'm pretty sure that the flashback he has now is of his Vietnam rescue. He is actually now he's on the helicopter.
I think
the helicopter gets attacked. The pilot of the helicopter, or the co-pilot, is shot. And then, boom! It cuts right back. He wakes up, and everyone's standing around him. Jezebel. This is where I'm just getting so confused at this point, because he wakes up and Jezebel is super pissed at him. Yeah. She threatens to leave him. Now this dude fucking passed out in the middle of this party.
I've dealt with crazy boyfriends for the past 3 years, and I can't take it anymore.
Thanks for your support, Jezebel.
Yeah.
Then they find out he has a temperature of 106, and they fucking lose it.
Yeah.
They lose it. The whole apartment floor holds him down, and they're all giving every piece of ice they have in their fridge. They put him in a bath filled with ice, pouring ice on him, and he says something, "Stop it! You're killing me!" And Not a very good line.
And then he passes out, I think.
He passes out, yeah, and he wakes up in bed.
He wakes up still in the tub, remember? It's like zoomed in on his eyes and it slowly goes back.
Yeah.
Well, no,
What
because
was that after?
Richie, I want to point out how well that you outlined this movie.
Yeah, like every scene, it's great. So I'm just bringing it back.
It's perfect. Well done, Richie.
No,
our host.
He wakes up in bed next to Sarah.
Yes.
He wakes up in bed next to Sarah, and then he turns to her and he describes every fucking thing that pretty much has happened so far in the movie.
I have
as a dream
that I was
that I was with Jez from the
Jesse
office.
Office.
Gabe is alive and well.
Right.
Then boom, another flashback to the Vietnam rescue, and then he wakes up in the bathtub.
Okay.
And then this is when I'm like, oh man, what's going on? Because I really want him to be with Sarah. I want Gabe to be okay.
Right.
His life with Jez she seems like a mega bitch. But then you're like, yeah, he's back in the bathtub, so he is with Jez. Reality, the sad tear rolling down cheek.
Now, would that be the inner struggle in maybe the director had when you are in that state? You almost have a choice if you want to go to heaven or hell. You could either go with Jezebel, the demon bitch.
I think so. I think that's part of the whole point of the movie, or like the whole plot. Can
I have a second? I'm going to Google. Is there a Sarah in the Bible?
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Let me see what Sarah stands for in the Bible, and we'll find out.
There's also the angel Gabriel. Gabriel's the son.
Right. Oh yeah, that's true.
Gabriel, I believe. I think I looked it up. He was God's messenger.
Right. He wrote Sledgehammer.
Peter Gabriel. Yes.
Sledgehammer.
Big time.
He wakes up and he's sad about Gabe. He mentions it, and Jez refers to Gabe again. Is not your dead son, but the dead one. Oh, the dead one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the one that...
She claims that the doctor says that Jake has a virus. And then this is when I think the movie is going to start doing a little explanation here, like broadening on it, because Jake starts doing research on demons and the occult. Mm-hmm. So he's going to the library, he's reading stuff about the occult, demons, she gets in his face, and Jake shoves her, and she morphs into a demon real quick.
Yeah, because she's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Is anybody home?" And she's got like these big black eyes. And did you notice her teeth?
Yes.
She had these tiny baby teeth.
She's like going hard on him, and then she morphs into a demon, and I'm like, "What the hell?"
Right.
So then the phone rings. Bling, bling. It's Paul Greeniger. He's an old war pal. He's very adamant that they need to see each other. Something's very wrong, Jake. I'm going to hell. Something very wrong. I'm going to hell. They're coming after me. They've been following me. I can't trust anybody. Which pretty much in a nutshell is describing everything that Jake's been going through this entire movie.
Sarah's on God's side.
Is she?
Yep. He promised her that she would be the birth of a new nation. So yeah, she's in God's right hand. So it's
in the Bible?
It's definitely a
weird
good and you want to know what? This is making me like the movie a little more because of the biblical references. I had no idea that Jezebel was the essential let's go to the dark side,
right?
And Sarah is right. Yeah, she's Darth Vader.
Who's Emperor Palpatine?
Sarah's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Emperor Palpatine's probably that homeless guy with the tail.
Gotcha. Possible. So he meets up with this guy, this old war pal, Paul, and he
shit, Paul.
Pruitt Taylor Vince from Identity.
Jake admits to Paul that he sees all these things too that Paul's talking to him about. So they're walking out to the car. Jake sees a quarter on the ground. I believe it's heads up. Lucky, right?
Okay.
So he stops to pick it up.
Must be my lucky day.
Stepping away from Paul. And then there's the very obvious...
It blows away.
Any movie you've ever seen, a mob movie, or any movie you've ever seen where a car blows up, they do the obvious shot of the car. And I'm like, this motherfucker is about to blow.
Airborne.
So he stops to pick up the quarter. Cut to Paul.
Paul is also an apostle of...
Paul looks at him and gives him the longest awkward smile before he turns the key.
Yeah.
Turns the key. Boom! Right as Jake says, "My lucky day," as he's picking up the quarter. Boom! Explodes. Now this brings us back to the doctor that somehow didn't exist but existed.
Wait, do you think that he blew up the car up himself, like a suicide bomb?
No, I think that...
Because he was so scared that people were going to come get him.
I think that whoever was after him, the military or whatever, that they did that bomb for him.
Of course.
And he's dead, yes. So Jake says, "My lucky day," car explodes, flashback to another non-rescued. I wish I would have paid more attention to these and finer detail, because this actually is the non-rescue where he's in the chopper finally.
Okay.
And it gets attacked. The pilot or the co-pilot gets shot. So that's that. So far, 2 people that Jake knows in his personal life have died in car explosions, Paul and Dr. Carlson. Which, now we're on to something deeper. Something deeper than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, so then we're going to go right into Paul's funeral, because he goes to Paul's funeral where he runs into...
the chemist?
Yes. I scribbled it because I was writing too fast. LaSalle. Oh, I'm so
Eric
stupid.
LaSalle?
Eric LaSalle is
He
at
was
Paul's
one of the
funeral.
people in the
opening, yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the soldiers.
But I didn't catch him in the opening the first time, and I caught
What's
him
his
at the
name in the
funeral.
movie?
Frank.
Frank. Yeah, Eric LaSalle from ER.
Oh yeah, in ER. That's
I wrote
that's where I
that.
know him from.
Ving Rhames is too. But then I said, didn't they all die? Because I could have sworn that everyone died
in the beginning of the movie. Ving Rhames pretty much looked fucking dead to me.
He looked really fucking dead.
Remember that the funeral. Everything's just his fantasy in his head,
Right.
So they all lived in the fantasy,
Right, but at this point, I'm saying we didn't know the ending. So
Well,
we're like,
you're
wait a minute,
right.
why is Ving
Correct.
Rhames here?
So we find out that Paul's death was actually ruled an accident, which what kind of accident is that where you turn your fucking key and your car explodes? All the vets, all the Vietnam vets, all Jake's buddies, they know it was an accident. They're
that one model sedan, we accidentally installed
Yes,
the ignition in the gas tank.
TNT. Yeah. So
Firestone
they all get
tires.
together and they're discussing.
Boom!
They're all getting together and they're all discussing Paul's paranoia demons. And they're beating around the bush, but it's obvious from the look in all their faces that they see the demons too.
Yeah, because like Ving Rhames drops his beer, the other guy sheds a tear, and then they all start talking on the roof.
Everyone but one person, this guy named Rob.
Right.
He's in total denial of their visions. Rob rationalizes that it's just bad grass.
It's just bad weed, man.
Just some bad
Now listen,
grass,
guys, I no
man.
longer indulge in smoke marijuana, but I did for a long time, and I've never had any weed that made me see demons.
Yeah.
I had bad weed that I smoked with an ex-girlfriend who she turned out to be a demon, but
Hey-o.
you know. Anyway,
Can you add the what do you call it?
It's gonna go.
What's that called? Can you add the rim shot?
Yeah.
the rim shot.
Post?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was confused because I don't know if they talked about it when they were in the kitchen discussing this, but then they talked about going to the police, and the next scene they're talking to George Costanza, Jason Alexander.
Right, they all want to do like a class action lawsuit.
Yeah, which you find out's the lawyer, but I was like, I thought he was like a police detective or something. I'm like, did they go to the police? They're blaming the army. George Costanza is cop. That's what I said.
Forever known as
or
George
is he a
Costanza.
lawyer? So obviously he ends
Lawyer,
up being a
cop.
lawyer, right?
Lawyer.
Yeah. Okay, he ends up being a lawyer, and then
Private
they
dick.
cut the shot out to where they're all being followed by a black sedan that has a U.S. government plate,
Right.
on it. Which I think the U.S. government would be a little bit more slick than that, but that's just me. I mean, but also
Its
you know,
license plate says Fed.
last
Gov.
week we did just one of the guys, so like I'm not gonna firmly plant my life in realism on a U.S. government plate.
Unmarked vehicle.
He ends up calling. I think Jake's taking a nap, and the lawyer calls. Jason Alexander calls, and he informs Jez that he is not taking the case. In fact, even though everyone was on board when they were in the office, not taking the case, he's saying that all of Jake's friends backed out.
Oh, my part. Yeah, I got something coming up. Keep going.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that the government has paid them off to say that or something.
I just know that after that, he calls Frank, which was played by Eric LaSalle. Jake calls
Right.
Frank immediately, like, what the fuck? Why have they all backed out? So he calls him, and Frank tells him that
This is the part.
he's like, don't call me back. Please don't call me back. And he informs them, the lawyer, played by Jason Alexander, informs that after checking with the Army Bureau, that Jake, in fact, has never been to Vietnam. Jake and his friends were expelled from Army after they played war games in Thailand due to psychological issues.
Right.
And that's when I'm like, all right, this movie's getting deep. It
Well,
took me a minute to get there.
when he's talking
It's
to him
been
on the
getting
phone-
deep, but like I'm getting a little bit of
When he's talking to him on the phone, the dude's he's in I would assume an apartment by himself, sitting in a one chair, staring out the window. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now this part, if you guys have ever seen Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story,
yeah.
you have.
I have seen it. Yeah.
You have seen it. Now, this guy with the conversation with Tim Robbins reminds me a lot when Dewey Cox busts in on Tim Meadows doing drugs. Where he's like, what are you guys doing in here? He's like, you don't want any part of this, Dewey. And he's like, why? He's like, oh, it'll give you a hangover and all this stuff. That's what the conversation spun off like.
Yeah.
He's like, well, why aren't you going to help me anymore? He's like, we don't want to help you anymore. And he's like, but why? He's like, because I just said we don't.
Right.
It just really spun like that for me, and I really thought that was.
Were you talking about with Eric LaSalle?
Yeah, when he's talking to him on the phone.
Yeah.
I was like,
So he gets all this information from the lawyer.
Did you spill your LaCroix?
And Jake, again, we're talking. I'm not too based in logic here, but he immediately attacks the lawyer. He attacks Jason Alexander.
Yeah.
Just goes at him. So he goes outside the building where he's taken in custody by government officials. So he jumps out of the car and he renders himself unconscious or badly injured, and he is promptly robbed by Santa Claus. Which I thought was interesting.
He walks up to him, right? He kicks him, and then he grabs his wallet.
Poor man.
That's
and
right.
He's stealing his wallet.
I thought that was really interesting.
Which is another why thing for
Because
me.
one of those, remember, he's in the hospital. He's like, who is trying to rob? He's like Santa Claus. He's like, yeah, Santa Claus.
Right.
Like, where no one believes the victim,
Right.
So when he comes to,
I thought it'd be another biblical reference, like maybe like wasting
I
fucking
thought the
money on
same
thing
thing or
bullshit
something.
holidays or
Yeah.
something,
there was something there that
There had to have been something.
They think, all right. So he wakes up with doctors. They think he's crazy. They take him down to X-ray, and then you see that he's rolling through the hospital, which is in fact an abandoned building.
Oh, it looks terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like a hospital, a loony bin.
It looked
and
like
then he sees a smashed bike.
similar to the new House on Haunted Hill
Yes,
kind of hospital
exactly.
setting. Yeah.
He sees a smashed up, bent up bike, which we learn is Gabe's bike.
Which he must have got hit by a car.
There
maybe?
are freaks everywhere and body parts lying around. A woman is breastfeeding. Did you see that? It just
Now this is the part where Elizabeth Pena's on the staff, right?
it's
I
it's
think so,
all
yeah.
around.
Yeah, that was weird.
all around mayhem. A team of doctors surround him, and one is Jezebel, played by Elizabeth Pena. The doctor asks, "Where would you like to go?" Jakes responds, "Home." Doc says, "You are home.
You are home.
You live here. You're dead." And I'm like, what?
And I love the shots
Because every time I think something's happening and I know that I'm pinned it goes the other way.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I like the shots of him going on the hospital bed, going through like the corridors, like all of the body parts on there, because there's a shot of the wheel, and the wheel kind of like does this weird thing where it kind of spins around independent of the other wheels, and they did that on purpose. They set one off balance so that it would kind of move and jitter and shake. And
like they tightened it, like almost like they put a brake on.
Made it a different level than the other
Yeah,
wheels, so
so
that it
you
would
know,
turn
wheel
and
spin.
just be weird and cool looking.
Oh, well, it was cool looking.
Yeah, I think they copied that in the opening title sequence to the show 6 Feet Under, if you've ever seen that.
I've never
but
seen
they
6
have
Feet
the
Under.
same thing where they're following like the wheel of a hospital or like a
gurney.
A gurney, or going.
That's
somewhere.
pretty rad.
And all of the imagery that you can see is a lot of it's taken from the photographs of Joel Peter Witkin, who in the 70s and 80s did a lot of photographs of body parts, freaks, that kind of thing. They're super dark and weird. Yeah, but that's like his descent into hell, as far as what I could gather.
That's what the next. He wants out. He says, "I want out of here." And they said, "There is no out of here. You've been killed." Okay. So then they show him awake, and Sarah and the kids visit. And the next thing that I've noted down is, what the fuck is happening? Right here. This is right here, this note. What the fuck is happening?
There's
Because,
a lot
like
of
I said, every time I think I've got it pinned, I don't know. Like, is he here? Is he there? Is he doing this? Is he doing that?
I had a pretty good idea at the beginning, but then I changed my mind halfway through, and then I was like, fuck, man, I have no idea what's going on.
So then Louie, the chiropractor, played by
Rescues
Danny
him.
Aiello,
Yeah.
comes in screaming. Yeah, he said, "This is now." Keep in mind that my last note was, "What the fuck is happening?" And then the next scene is Louie comes in hospital screaming. He's insane. He breaks Jake out in a wheelchair. I think he's gonna fucking cut somebody. He tells him that
Nobody tries to apprehend him either.
They have this weird kind of.
That was weird to me.
Yeah,
like, nobody. They backed away. They're You're like, whoa, that's Danny Aiello.
Yeah, if Danny
maybe 'cause,
Aiello
like,
came in like that, I'd be like, fuck it. Asking
it's so,
for
like,
Zach, I'd be like, fucking take him.
They're like hell's demons, and they're afraid of Louie.
Angel.
They're afraid of an angel.
See, now the movie is getting better right now in my head because of all the biblical references. I love that shit.
Yeah.
They have this weird private chiropractic session, and then a flashback occurs of we see the twisted bike that belonged to Gabe.
Right.
We don't see what happened to Gabe, but then we get a flashback of Gabe crossing the street, played by Macaulay Culkin, on his bike and getting hit by a car.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, now I know what happened with that. So then the next scene after he wakes up from that is he's walking into the apartment and Jez is there and she says, "Where have you been?" And she's very worried. And she said that she's called every hospital and that she could not find out where he was. And I didn't know. I was like, I thought she was I thought she was in on it. I thought he was aware that she was in on it. And then
she's still trying to get him to do something, come to one side.
And that's when we start getting a lot more information about what's going on here. A mysterious caller calls Jake and says that he was part of chemical warfare.
Rich, I would have loved it if he goes, "Do you know who the Ninth Circle is?"
Yes.
Do
you know who the Ninth Circle of Hell is there for? No, I don't.
Honk if you love popcorn.
Exactly. Honk, honk. Beep, beep, Richie.
Bringing it in.
So, of course, the first thing that you do when a mysterious caller says that you've been part of like a chemical warfare experiment, you say, "Yeah, I'll agree. Let's meet up." So he meets up with this guy named Michael Newman. He tells Jake that
Easter eggs are plentiful.
He is one of the survivors. Now, Michael was a manufacturer of LSD hired by the United States government to get out of a prison sentence that he was in for LSD manufacturing to make a crazy rage drug called ladder. His battalion, Jake's battalion in Vietnam, was the test for the army. So then we find out really quickly that the attack at the beginning of the movie wasn't actually Viet Cong soldiers. It was them fighting each other because they're all whacked out crazy on this rage drug ladder that this guy created. And we find that out really quickly, and nothing really comes of that except it cuts to a scene really quick, pretty much that Jake's at his old home to go see Sarah and the boys. The apartment is empty. It seems like everyone was in a rush to get out. He sees Gabe in the apartment. They walk into a back room, like a mud room. Would you call that?
Yeah.
Gondola?
They walk into like the back room with the staircase leading up.
Wait, that's a boat, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
What am I thinking of?
I don't know.
There's a word. I know. I can't think of it.
Yeah, we'll say foyer.
So
totally rhymes.
They're walking up these steps, and at the top of these steps is I might be making this up in my head, but I think it's a stained glass window with the sun shining through it.
Yep, you're right.
And
it's on the stairwell.
They walk
right?
up the steps towards the light, and as they're walking up, the light gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And then the next scene cuts to the hospital, or the hospital hut, or triage is the word you use, which I like.
Yeah,
I think that's what
that is.
Cut to the triage in Vietnam where they're standing over Jake and they pronounce him dead, and then they announce that he looks very peaceful.
Right.
End of movie.
And us talking about it right now made me like it so much more.
I like it better now that I talked about it, but when I was watching it, I can be completely honest that I was not a fan.
Same here.
I didn't hate it, but I'm like, what the
it's a big what the fuck
What
movie,
the fuck is happening?
If you're looking,
until you watch it, and then I
what the fuck.
rereading it makes me like it a lot more.
The
but
whole point of having a twist ending is that it once you know what happened, then it. Wait, I almost said once you know what happened, then you know what happened. But once you know what happened at the end, that explains every question.
But
that
like,
you had
all right,
before,
like
or should have.
okay, like we talked about these movies at the beginning. I mentioned them, like Memento, Donnie Darko, shit like that. When I watched them, I liked them as the movie was going on. I didn't like this movie until after we talked about it. When it was happening,
I didn't like it until
I think
right
I was
now.
more confused than I would have liked to be. And I follow things pretty well, like I look at the.
I'm not a religious guy.
I'm not a religious guy either. So
right. I think all three of us were not considered.
I think the
very
Bible's
religious.
interesting as far as the stories.
Right. Now, when we talked, it may have been 20 minutes ago when we were talking about Jezebel and Sarah. It's like that kind of brought up a really neat point. Is if you die, what if you had the choice?
Right.
You know, like what if, like I'm saying, like if it comes to that time and you're in that purgatory, and you have an option to go with like crazy hot bitch,
Right.
or the regular play it safe. Like, what if you actually
like
had a choice?
He could have willed himself to live.
Exactly.
And then he would have had the life with Jezebel, and then it would have been scary.
So yeah.
So it was like the whole movie is like a premonition of what he could have happened.
That's crazy.
Had
That's
he
crazy.
just chose to lead this other life instead of just saying like, well, I'm kind of dead, and I want to let go of my memories, and I just want to be dead, and I want to be with my son in heaven.
And that's where Danny Aiello's
Right.
quote came
I just
in.
don't see. I don't like the point of solving the great mystery of the ladder drug and all that stuff if you're just dead and you're gonna. I don't know.
I think
It
that's
was him
I think
trying
I
to rationalize.
Like I
why
appreciate it
happened.
more now than I did when I watched it the first time.
yeah.
Okay.
But I am with you about that. Like the why bring up this ladder drug because it had such a small, I
Yeah,
guess
it
small
didn't have
part.
a-
But what if it was the drug that killed him instead of being stabbed?
Exactly.
Or
I
wait a
think
minute,
I
wait a
would've-
minute. We established that they were all on the drug and they
Yeah.
all attacked each other, right?
They do
Right.
show.
So then,
They
yeah,
end up
then-
showing the attack again, and they
Right.
do show the attacker, and
Who
it's
was it
a
that
it's
stabbed
a.
him? I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly who it was. I just know that it was definitely, obviously, a United
Someone on their
States.
side.
Well, there we go.
Army man,
well, there we go.
soldier,
Then that makes
so-
total sense.
So, like, all right, would I recommend it? If you'd have asked me right after I watched it, I would have said fuck no. But now, in retrospect, thinking about it, it was a better movie than I assumed. I would say yes, I would recommend it. If somebody was like, man, I really want to see a psychological thriller to throw me for a loop, I like, Memento. I like, they name, Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
I don't think, however, I think it gets more praise than what it's due, in my opinion, because I'm going to put it out there that Zach did not talk this movie up to us. He was like, this is the movie he recommended us watch, but he wasn't like, fucking, this is the end-all, be-all of movies.
I mean,
but
I love the movie, but
I've
that's
heard
why I
for
recommend
years.
it.
I've heard from years that people are like, "This is the greatest fucking movie ever made. You need to watch it."
I
And-
wouldn't say that.
Yeah, and after I watched it, I would tell those guys they were wrong.
Yeah.
But it was a good movie in retrospect. I would recommend. Matt,
Same thing as you. I watched it. I never watched it when I was younger. So
this is my first view.
when you and
I saw it probably for the first time maybe 10, 15 years ago.
in high school, you
Yeah.
told me, "Have you seen Jacob's Ladder?" And I said no. And then, we started hanging out again, like, what, fucking 40 years later. You're like, have you seen Jacob's Ladder yet? And I said, no. We started doing this podcast, so I watched it.
Right.
And initially, I'm like, dude, fuck.
I called Matt.
No
I called
way.
Matt,
Like,
and
I could not get into it.
I called Matt right after it ended. I was like, "What the fuck did I just watch?"
And I'm like, I don't know, man. But after talking through it and realizing the biblical names, who
Yeah.
Jezebel was, who Sarah was,
Right.
and it just blew my mind now. Like, I'm like, yeah, it was a really good film. I would recommend it. I would put it up there with Memento and Donnie
It's
Darko. I
a
would.
good psychological
Yeah,
thriller.
it's
Yeah.
like a puzzle type mystery.
Right.
kind
So
of-
the camera angles at the very beginning of the movie were super zoomed in and flashy. I'm like, okay, that's too. If it's gonna be like that the entire movie, that's too.
There
much.
was a couple
But it
try hard
stopped.
moments, but it was good.
It stopped and it was good. I liked it.
We can go with Zach.
The
We know
Slender
obviously
Man was great too.
Zach, it's a recommend from Zach. It's one of his
Before I
faves.
forget, though, I wanted
But-
to mention apparently Tom Hanks was the first choice to play Jacob.
That's right, you told me that.
I'd
Someone
look it up.
else that's extremely tall. Cool.
And there were other big directors, including Ridley Scott, who had tried to get the movie greenlit and didn't for some reason.
Wow.
Wow, I wonder
Now, Zach,
Ridley Scott's
Zach,
spin on that.
we know that it's a recommend for you, and this is something I want to try to ask people who have picked a movie from now on. Fresh eyes, watching it again for the podcast. Anything you've seen that you didn't see before, or any new thoughts on it, or did you just remain?
I don't know if I had new thoughts, but I did hear. I remember paying attention to the book that he was reading on the subway.
Yeah.
And then what Matt said about the gurneys or the wheelchairs or whatever outside of
I
his
didn't
apartment.
catch that. I'm so mad I didn't catch that.
only-
You
Yeah.
saw how detailed
I only
this
caught
was,
it because
right?
Matt had mentioned it to me. I'd never thought of it before.
It was a camera angle from inside his apartment. When the door opens, you could see it outside. It was very
Pisses
small.
me off. Okay.
Also,
so
wait, wanted to forget one more thing. Don Johnson turned down the role. He was offered the role. Don Johnson from Miami Vice. Also, Mickey Rourke was offered the role. And he turned it down as well. But the actors who were allegedly interested in playing the leading role, Richard Gere, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino. Yeah, that's all I really got as far as my notes.
okay.
So
all right.
what are your?
That was
Tell us
a-
what you think.
Well, he likes it. It's a recommend.
Well, yeah,
it's his
definitely
pick.
recommend. Yeah, it's again, I wouldn't call it a horror film, but psychological thriller is a good.
Yeah, definitely getting pushed into the horror category. I get it. I can see it a little bit, but it's so obvious.
It's not
psychological thriller.
Yeah,
if you watch it,
it's kind of disturbing.
Oh, it's very disturbing.
But it's not. I wouldn't call.
Was
it
there
horror,
any
but
new? But like Richie said, you said no. There wasn't anything new that maybe
that I noticed?
changed your.
I like
Not
you
a
guys
whole
underplayed
lot.
the fact that demon sex scene is pretty fucking graphic.
It is
You guys
really
are like,
good.
"Oh, she's
But no, I
fucking in
guess maybe just doing this podcast now made me realize more of the biblical references that I only really touched on it, but I didn't know more about like Sarah and
Jezebel
Gabe
and
Jezebel and all that. But I even appreciate it more now.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's what's
Yeah.
great about that movie. And if you talk about it, it works itself out. 'Cause
Yeah.
Jacob's there was a couple of parts where I was like, "What is Tim Robbins doing?" Because I thought that there was a couple lines that he delivered.
Somebody did say online that he delivered a masterful performance. I was like,
I thought it was pretty good.
He was good, but
There was just a couple parts where he had a bad delivery, in my opinion. But other than that, I'm a Tim Robbins fan.
I
so-
love Tim
I like
Robbins.
Tim Robbins,
Tim Robbins. I'm a fan of.
especially Mystic River.
All right, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this has been the latest episode number 3 of the podcast that is known as Video Store Rewind. Again, I am Zach. I'm Zach. I'm sorry, I fucked up. I'm Rich.
Wish.
That is Zach. Across from me is Matt.
Hello.
And if you guys stay tuned for episode 4, we'll be covering Matt's pick, which is
Monster Squad.
one of my favorites, released August 14th, 1987, The Monster Squad.
I already give it a 10. I highly recommend it.
Hey, you don't, dude. I could talk. There'd be a 3-hour episode.
Zach hasn't seen it, but
I have never seen it.
I'm so
I know
excited.
he's gonna love it. I know he's gonna love
Do
it.
you like the Goonies?
yeah, of course.
Oh, you're in. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're gonna
So
love
check
it.
us out next week, guys. We'll be doing the Monster Squad, and I don't want to go too far ahead, but if you've got time, I already know what my pick's gonna be. It is, I don't know the release date, but it's a movie released in 1986.
Are you talking
Night of the Comet. Night of the Comet.
Yes!
Starring Catherine Mary Stewart and
1984.
1984. My crush, Kelly Maroney. She was also the cheerleader in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and she was in Shopping Mall, and she tweeted me.
Shopping Mall. She did.
Yeah, she tweeted me. But check those movies out, guys. Monster Squad, if you haven't seen it, Night of the Comet, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Video Store